to WROL Broadcast. I am Hate Mail, and with me today we have Ogre Barbarian.
Hello.
And this is the Magic ManaStrike edition, and we will be talking about Calix today. But before we get into that, let's go through a little bit of news. If you haven't catched our news blurb emergency podcast that we did, that was about the Magic ManaStrike live stream, their first ever one. They announced two new characters, a red character named Koth and a red-black character named Angrath. And they also had five new cards, one for each color, and they announced. Um, I think that were they all? No, they weren't all two mana cards. Several of them were, but
Well,
yeah,
there was a lot of 2 manas and then a 7 mana.
yeah.
It,
So
it felt like they were trying to balance out numbers because it felt like the colors that got 2 mana ones didn't already have a lot of 2 mana options.
right, and then they also announced friend PvP duels and eventually having 2v2, and there will also probably be some nerfs, some buffs, some balancing basically in that
Yeah,
in that patch that probably is already released by the time you're listening to this.
lots of
So,
exciting stuff. If you haven't checked out our episode, please go do so.
and with that, let's get into Calix. Let's just your overall thoughts of Calix, Ogre. How did you like him with your experimenting this week?
At the beginning of the week, I thought he was trash. I did not like him. I'm going to just be flat honest. I cannot play white, like, to save my life. Uh, but, like, I'm one of those players that I don't necessarily rate it on my own personal ability to do it. I have to rate him on, okay, what is he capable of doing and all this other stuff. And at beginning of the week, I just couldn't use him, couldn't figure out what his purpose was. So I thought he was trash. And then
What?
the last couple of days now, I've kind of come around on him a little bit. I haven't really changed my mind of him not being quite playable just yet. Now, rephrase that. If you specialize in Calix and you are focused on his deck and his playstyle, you'll probably be pretty good. He's a very decent planeswalker. I just couldn't figure out everything about him I needed to in a timely enough manner to make it work for me. If that is political enough an answer for you.
And I will say that as a white player, I've played almost exclusively white. Well, actually, I've been playing other colors. This past week, I've gotten a lot of playtime in, so I actually feel experienced enough. I made it to rank 6, almost rank 7, so I'm not a terrible player anymore. And I have played with a lot of the colors. I bought a lot of cards recently, all those little small packs, and almost maxed out my. I'm like 10 points away, which I'll do tonight. The what's it called?
The
The
pass.
Magic Pass. So I have feel a lot more in tune with the game now. And as a main white player, I do like Calix a lot more. My problem is that I find green, most of the green cards, to not be
Slightly
very,
underwhelming.
yeah, very,
Yeah,
I wouldn't even say slightly, I'd say very underwhelming. And the deck I've been running with him is almost all white. And while he isn't bad, his skill is just not. I
it's
mean,
counterintuitive.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
sometimes decent. I mean, there was a few times where, and let's back up a little bit. His
So
skill, Call
here,
of Fate.
I kind of figured out what I think it's for.
Well, let me read what the skill is for the audience that
Yeah,
don't
yeah, go
have
ahead.
him. So his skill is move a nearby allied unit to a target location. And that part of it, it can sometimes be useful to kind of sneak a character past things, but in practice or in live like use, it doesn't come in use too often.
Yeah, it's a very tricky skill to use, but I think I figured out what it's for ideally, and it pairs with Blinding Mage
Right.
really nicely. So the idea is that if you place Calix towards the middle of the map and you place the Blinding Mage within his circle somewhere that's also towards the back behind the Guardian, so it's kind of protected, right? You can then use Calix to throw the Blinding Mage into the opposite lane after you've cleared out your opponent's push.
Yeah. And I can see
That's
that
what I
being
think it's
useful.
for. That's
I've
what I think it's for.
There's been a
So,
handful of times where I've successfully moved someone. More often, I found that it was when it was like a melee character that I needed to move in front of an opponent, blinding mage or ranged character, and I could push them into them. and because Calix goes down so quick sometimes, if it's another melee character I'm moving it into, it keeps him back a little bit so he can use his ranged ability.
Yeah,
But he
he
is
is a little
very
squishy.
squishy. He's
He's
very
very
squishy.
squishy. Yeah. I did notice that his basic attack is very good at clearing out like a lot of smaller minions. He's not real good against the heftier units, but against things like Hedron Scouts or the Clockwork Beetles, things that have a lot of units that are smaller, he can churn through those real quick because his basic hits a bunch of things. So
So what deck wise, what kind of cards were you using for him?
So for me, again, I'm not really a big white player, so I was running Blinding Mage, but just because it's a long-ranged attacker that hits air, because I didn't have a lot of anti-air, I had him. I didn't like Core Entangler in his deck, but that's because you end up wanting to place the Core Entangler where Calix should be, and I didn't like that because he kept dying. So I took him out actually, but you still run like the Haunted Guardian and the Hedron Scout, and you want to just use him kind of as a counter push. Is how I kind of started playing him, and then I started running things like Rolling Slime.
Rolling Slime
And
does seem like a pretty good card. I mean, I really haven't experimented with it a ton, but it does seem like a good
I've
card.
had a lot of fun with it, if nothing else. So who
I'm
doesn't like throwing a slime ball at somebody?
I tend to run the standard white deck, Knight of Belina,
Nubanaya?
Benalia. I'm
Yeah.
terrible at pronouncing stuff. Spectral Procession, Sanctifier of Souls, Core Entangler, Haunted Guardian, Blinding Mage, and the Ratchet Bomb. So no green. Typical white deck. It's almost the exact same deck I run with. Actually, I do run a slightly different deck with Gideon. I usually run. Um, I've been running Griffin again because it's just the
Well,
I
Gideon's a different deck.
yeah, and Griffin is
It,
just
ju- it goes to show you how much the Planeswalker can affect your play.
exactly. And I
So
find that these giant push demon decks, Reaver Demon, you have to have more flying to help counter it. So
you know what's fun? Calix can help answer that to a degree
how's that?
because he exiles the thing with the highest HP.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I forgot he does
So
that.
if you're getting pushed by some giant Aether Squall Ancient Reaver Demon, you can pop Calix down. He'll exile one of them, and the other ones all of a sudden get nuked down by the rest of your guys. So I
Yeah,
mean,
that
it's
is probably one of his most
not a
underrated
great
abilities.
answer, but it
Yeah,
is a unique answer that he has.
yeah,
Unless you're running Path to Exile, which let's face it, people don't.
right.
So at least gives him a little bit of play where other Planeswalkers might struggle.
I don't think it
So
lasts very long though. Is the big problem.
it doesn't. It's only a couple of seconds. So, but a lot of times I've noticed that Reaver Demon is on really low health because he was tanking your push, and then they'll drop the Aether Squall after the fact to protect him and give him the invisibility.
That is true.
So, I mean, I'm not saying Calix is the answer to that, but I have a feeling that he has a pretty decent play against it.
Yeah, he's not bad. I mean, I think
So,
he could use a little bit of love if they would give him a little bit of health, or maybe make his ranged ability do a slightly
yeah,
more damage so that compensates for his low health.
or just a slightly buff the attack speed, even,
I
because his
think if
attack animation's real slow.
well, and if Green got a little bit of love in one of these
That
upcoming
probably would
patches,
help, yeah. That
that
probably
might
would help a lot, yeah.
that might help a lot. Well, that new card that's coming out on Green might actually.
That's true.
You pair that with Blinding Mage, that could be pretty ugly.
Yeah,
And
Sylvan
Blinding
Advocate,
Mage doesn't
Advocate
get
Fighting
nerfed into
Mage
the
could be
ground.
really good, yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, we'll see.
yeah, exactly. Which wouldn't overly shock me if that happens. So,
No.
all right, guys. Well, with that, I think we will go ahead and wrap this one up.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, thanks for listening.
Have